Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll begin with this evening's meeting for the Planning Commission this January 4th at 6 p.m. And first order of business will be the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any submissions, changes, questions?
I move that they be approved as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next order of business applies to the Hartford Mall project. Kevin, will you please present that?
Okay, the public hearing was closed at the last December 7th meeting. This action on tonight's meeting was advertised on December 20th and December 27th in the local paper. A sample or a draft of what could be the decision has been provided to the Planning Commission. What you need to do now is to review prior to a vote to see whether or not there's any changes you want to make to that decision. And then I would suggest you go down through the list by how it's been presented on the sample you've been provided.
Okay.
And this is just to clarify, this is subject of a public hearing on November 2nd, December 7th, and now we have the deliberations on January 4th. This is a site plan, a landscape plan, a subdivision, and a special development review for a mixed-use center, including proposed 249 apartment complex with integrated parking garage. There you go.
All right.
Was there any comments that you wanted to solicit from any
Anyone
of us?
any additional comments from the commissioners?
Hearing none.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to say it's been, I think, an exhaustive activity here, and I guess what we're about to do, and as a result of all the comments and reviews from the various committees, and, from the town and the county and the state, I think it's been done the best job that could be done on this. It's a very complicated issue, but I think we're ready.
I'd also like to say that town council put together the findings and fact and conclusions of law that apply to this. And I highly recommend that you go online. It'll be available tomorrow. And take the time to read it because it's very, very thorough. And it responds to every comment and request that was sent to us here.
I move that the project is consistent with the 2022 Bel Air Comprehensive Plan as required by Town Code Section 165-19.
Second.
Are you going to read each area, though?
No, we're going to do that first.
We've gotta do
Okay.
that first.
All right.
If we don't do that, we don't do anything else. We'll
Okay,
be
very
done.
good. Yay or nay? Keith?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
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 Okay. Under the heading of Special Development for the Mixed Use Center, move for approval for special development for a mixed use center based upon the following findings of fact. A, the applicant has provided a unified arrangement of buildings, service areas, parking, signage, and landscaping. B, the architecture, site design, lighting, and signage incorporate consistent design and theme elements and materials massing and facade design for the project that is in harmony with the character of the neighborhood. C, the internal circulation system is designed to minimize through traffic and traffic conflicts with the project. D, safe pedestrian movement and the provisions of pedestrian walks within the parking lot and surrounding the building perimeter is considered in the design. E, all proposed establishments that have vehicular service access either from an individual service drive, space, or from a common service yard. All loading, trash removal, compaction, or similar activities are segregated from public areas and screened from public view. F, signs to identify the use of an occupant will be designed as part of the architectural design of the building. Proposed signage is conditioned for the approval of the preliminary site plan as subject to review and approval by the Planning Commission. G, directional and informational signs will be adequately provided and design coordinated. H, center management is responsible for providing on-site security service. I, traffic and/or parking study was submitted and approved prior to the application. J, the owners of all lots will execute a recorded development agreement with the town, providing that all owners acknowledge and agree to be bound by the performance standards as an overall scheme of development, outlining all shared elements, granting reciprocal easements to permit each owner to access any other owner's lot or parcel of land for the purpose of compliance with the town code and for either remediating any zoning violations or to comply with the town code for the purpose of any approvals sought by any of the owners of the lot, and agreeing that the town shall permit enforcement of any portion of the town code upon one or more owners of any lot or parcel of land contained within the mixed-use center scheme for development.
Second.
Second?
Bill?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we approve the site plan. At a minimum, approval of the preliminary site plan is conditioned on the following. Prior to the building permit application, submission of a final site plan for signature, incorporating comments from this staff report, and comments from A, Bel Air Volunteer Fire Company dated October 25th, 2023. B, Harford County Health Department dated October 18th, 2023. C, Harford County Soil Conservation District dated October 23rd, 2023. D, Harford County and Maryland State Highway Administration pending comments on any intersection or road improvements. E, Bel Air Public Works comments dated October 13th, 2023. F, Harford County Public Schools dated October 26, 2023. 2, prior to approval of utility and construction drawings, address comments from the Maryland American Water Company. 3, prior to signature of final site plan, approval of revised architectural design exhibits based on the town architectural consultant comments dated October 24, 2023, and dated November 20th, 2023. 4, prior to signature of final site plan, revision of the streetscape to provide expanded pedestrian amenities along the south building edge for review and approval by the Planning Commission. 5, execution of an agreement between the town and the applicant to abandon a minimum of 34,307 square feet of commercial space within the project to exclude from parking calculation prior to issuance of a building permit. The applicant will execute an agreement with the town to prohibit from relocating uses amongst abandoned spaces. 6, in addition to the agreement concerning the abandoned space, the applicant will be required to maintain 50% of the area as a commercial use throughout the project area. 7, the calculation of parking excluding the corridor space is consistent with normally accepted planning principles based on interpretation by the zoning administrator. 8, the abandonment of space within the mall for a minimum of 1 year meets the definition contained in Section 165-104 of the Development Regulations. 9, provision of open space fee in lieu in the amount of $176,500 in cash, subject to the Town Board of Commissioners approval prior to a building permit issuance. the applicant will agree in writing to notify the department within 30 days of any termination for any reason of the leases on the Macy's department store and/or the Macy's furniture store. 10, prior to issuance of the final use and occupancy permit, A, complete all site work on the final plat to include 1, construction of required improvements outlined in the town traffic impact analysis conditional approval letter dated September 11th, 2023, and 2, landscape installation.
Do I have a second?
Madam Chair,
Second.
can I ask, can I
Yes.
add one thing? I just wanted to clarify one issue in the reading of that. You guys are approving the fee in lieu in cash, like you said. So basically, while you are approving it in cash, you are denying the applicant's request to provide the fee in lieu in a form of a surety. So they will have to come up with the cash, they cannot post a letter of credit, and they cannot post a bond. So I just wanted to clarify that for the record before you guys actually voted.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I believe we had a second, did we?
We do.
All right. Bill?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. I have a motion on the landscape plan.
I move at a minimum approval of the landscape plan is conditioned on the following. Number 1, prior to building permit issuance, submission, and approval of the final landscape plan incorporating comments from the staff report.
Second.
Keith?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
All right, I move that the subdivision plan be approved subject to the following. Prior to building permit application, submission of a final subdivision plat for signature incorporating comments from the staff report, comments from Hartford Health Department, the comments dated October 18th, 2023, Bel Air Public Works, comments dated October 25th, 2023. Maryland State Highway Administration, comments dated November 10th, 2023. Bel Air Department of Planning and Community Development, comments to revise the subdivision plat to depict all existing and proposed easements. Also, prior to building permit issuance, recordation of the final subdivision plat along with any easement documents and any other required documents to be recorded amongst the land records of Hartford County. Also, the submission of a development agreement to the town for approval and recordation as required in section 165-53.I, open paren 2, open paren G. Also complete all of the conditions of the Town of Bel Air traffic impact analysis approval dated September 11th, 2023, prior to use and occupancy. All conditions of MDOT, State Highway Administration regarding state roads and intersections, and all conditions of Hartford County concerning county roads and intersections must be addressed prior to use and occupancy.
Second.
Keith? Yea or
Aye.
nay? Pete?
Aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye as well.
Just as a clarification, the attachment that you referred to earlier,
Yes.
attachment to the decision of Bel Air Planning Commission findings of fact and conclusions of law is attached and made part of this decision.
Very good. And again, I highly recommend that you read through it. All right, thank you. We're going to have a change in the order. We'd like to step to the new business. If you would please present that, Kevin.
All right, yep, so this is new business, which is been commonly called, when you reviewed this a while ago, it was 221 Linwood Avenue. It's now been subdivided and is 301, 303, 305. Hold on one second. nobody saw your password. 301, 303, 305, and 307 Linwood Avenue. Property is zoned R1. It's commonly referred to the public as the area somewhat behind the Bel Air United Methodist Church, in near the Homestead property. Let's see, again, the Homestead parcel is not part of this application, even though it was subdivided last time. It's only the 4 lots that were approved last time are being revised. So what you got is the lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 on parcel 1629 were subdivided from the adjacent parcel and recorded in the Harford County Land Records as Plat 21792 on May 26, 2023. Planning Commission approved this subdivision on September 1st, 2024, or 2022, sorry. The applicant is requesting approval to re-subdivide the 4 existing recorded lots. And those are on the monitor as the existing plat shows. Into 4 lots, also 4 lots, reconfigured to provide better relationship to the existing topography, and the applicant will explain that. Lot 5 is the remainder parcel of 1628 and is to be combined with parcel 1627 by deed. The applicant needs to answer whether that's been done or not. The revision appears to be precipitated, again, by the topography which slopes from south to north. The slope makes the construction of a single-family home difficult while maintaining a front-facing dwelling unit. All improvements within the right-of-way must be approved by the Town of Bel Air Department of Public Works, including but not limited to sidewalks and curb cuts for driveways. And this is something that I believe was DPW is no longer requiring, and this is a 5-foot sidewalk extended westward along the southern right-of-way of Linwood Avenue to tie into the existing walk where it ends opposite Maitland Street. So what they're doing is it's nearly impossible for the sidewalk to be extended all the way to the church because the slope comes down and requires quite a bit of grading, which would result in the removal of trees, things like that, and these trees are large. So the Town Public Works is allowing a crosswalk across Linwood Avenue to be able to tie into that part of the sidewalk that's on Maitland Street. Let's see. The proposed driveway for lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 will all utilize the same driveway to access Linwood Avenue. Zoning sees this as a plus. Now you have 1 driveway into Linwood instead of 4. The driveway is located within 2 10-foot wide panhandles for lots 2 and 3 and contains a use in common driveway easement that benefits all lots that they'll have to create or revise going forward. The drive appears to be a proposed 18-foot wide, if you can answer whether that's correct, and that would be within the easement for the vehicles to pass. So you're not going to have one having to back out because there's not enough room to go to pass each other. Front yard side setback for all lots must be generated from the public road right-of-way. The front yard setback for the panhandle lots is generated as a 35-foot arc from the end of the panhandle. So you can't really generate a front yard setback on the panhandle itself, so it's whenever the lot expands out after that panhandle has ended. Let's see. The front facade of all lots must face the common driveway. No landscape plan was submitted with the revised subdivision plan, although that they have a previously approved landscape plan. Street trees are required along the entire frontage of Linwood Avenue, including lot number 5 as mandated in the previous staff report. Either additional trees must be provided or the existing trees that are being preserved by not putting the sidewalk in can be counted towards that, but it has to be shown on that landscape plan. It was confusing for us to look at to see whether or not that was being done. The existing approved landscape plan must be revised to provide the additional street trees or designate those existing trees. Forest and delineation for the site was approved on August 5th, 2022. Forest Conservation Plan was submitted along with the Planning Commission review package on August 4th, 2022, and the Forest Conservation Plan was approved on March 14th, 2023. We need to clarify whether this plan will change. It doesn't appear to, but I want to make sure that that is, that the applicant makes comment to that. That's all I have.
Before, if I may, before the applicant gets started, just by way of disclosure, I don't find the need to recuse myself unless you direct me to do so, but I am a member of the church, which is the owner-operator of the property. I don't serve in any stewardship role there. I don't receive compensation from the church, actually just the opposite, like most of us, and just wanted to have that in the record.
Also, just Ward Properties is the owner of the 4 lots, while the church retains, the, remainder. The properties that are being changed are
I think Ward is the contract purchaser of this.
contract purchaser.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
Okay, thank you. Will you please give your name and address, please?
Greg
And
Stewart.
you'll have to speak very close to the
Okay.
microphone.
Can you hear me? Greg Stewart, Frederick Ward Associates, 5 South Main Street. So with Frederick Ward taking contract purchaser on these lots and looking at the final engineering for these lots, the way that they were designed, with 3 of the 4 fronting on Linwood Avenue, the grade from Linwood up to the rears of the lots was pretty excessive, 10 plus feet. So with trying to grade in a driveway and site the house and not have the rear of the yard higher than the finished floor of the house, it was going to require, if we were to go that way, it was going to require retaining walls on both, on the side that abuts the existing lots and on the side that abuts Lot 5. And it was going to require quite a bit of dirt haul off through the residential neighborhoods in the town of Bel Air. So we were looking at other options to improve that situation. So this new configuration, by rotating lots 1 and 2 to face what is now the shared driveway, the grading of these lots worked out much better as far as matching to the existing topography that's there. And again, the benefit of reducing the number of driveway connections directly onto Linwood Avenue. So the footprint of the 4 lots, the outside perimeter of the 4 lots is unchanged. So it doesn't affect the Lot 5 at all. So really this application is specific to those 4 lots. We would ask that anything that's required of Lot 5 not be part of this application, because if Lot 5 is not included, that's not part of what Ward has under contract and is not part of this application. But we do think that this is we'll end up with a nicer product, a nicer finished situation for these lots. So that's our request.
Okay. Questions?
Is it creating, in effect, like a court? Am I visualizing it the
Yeah,
right way?
So yes, I mean, if you in looking at it, would be like these little 4 lots on a
Effectively a court.
a private road, yeah, private cul-de-sac. Well, it won't be a cul-de-sac, but a shared drive, yeah.
That's my only question.
And we have made we show the shared portion of the driveway 18 feet wide so that vehicles can cross each other without having to do, and there's plenty of, should be plenty of space with the driveways on lots 2 and lot 3. If somebody were to go up that driveway and need to turn around, they should be able to use that as an ability to turn themselves around so that they wouldn't have to back out again then onto Linwood Avenue.
And the residence that's going to be in Lot 4, that's the single on the left-hand side.
Yes, yes.
That is going to, the front is going to face the others.
Yeah, so it'll be a little bit different architecture than the other 3. It'll be a not as deep a house, but a wider house. and it'll be a side entry. It's shown there as a side entry garage on the high side, so that again, the fall of the house goes with, away from the garage. So I don't want to call it a walkout, but the side facing Linwood would almost be at a walkout elevation relative to the basement.
I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. Lot 4 and Lot 1 will both extend to Linwood Avenue?
They'll have frontage on Linwood Avenue, yes.
Thank you.
Members of the commission, I wanted to point something out to you in reviewing this application. When the planning commission provided its previous approval, the previous applicant, I guess, submitted a forest retention plan that was approved by you guys. And on that forest retention plan was various specified specimen or champion trees. And you guys required that the applicant identify those trees, identify what would be retained, what would be removed, and that they would take all steps to attempt to preserve these very old trees. I think they're old and, right? Old and big, okay?
Yeah.
So after that was done, this was in April of 2023, I think. The applicant's attorney, Diane Stenstack, and myself went back and forth. We had various development documents, and we basically agreed to a declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions for these 4 lots. They're currently recorded in land records of Harford County at Liber 15932, folio 494. And as a condition, they are required that the champion trees identified and labeled should be protected, maintained, and kept on the property to the best extent possible. I reviewed the landscape plan and discussed the matter with Mr. Small today. I can't identify what the applicant is proposing to change with respect to that issue. So if they are planning to change anything, this needs to be amended because, this was signed and provided to the town under one representation by the applicant. So if they're changing that representation, then, so we are all contractually on the same page, and if Kevin has to enforce it, again, we're on the same page. They need to agree to amend this with the town, because we do have enforcement rights under it. I made sure of it. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys.
Thank you.
Limits of disturbance for the new configuration does not alter from the limits of disturbance that was shown on the original plan that was approved.
But I can't tell where the trees are in relation to where they are on the forest conservation plan.
I can provide that. I would, everything, any trees that were agreed to be maintained would be outside the limits of disturbance and would still be outside the limits of disturbance, still be maintained. Any of the trees that were going to be taken down that were inside the limits of disturbance will still be taken down
Okay.
as inside so it should remain unchanged.
So on behalf of the applicant, you would agree that that conservation plan will not be altered
Correct.
without the planning commission's
Correct.
approval? Okay.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure of that. Okay.
Yep.
Good, thank you. All right, is there any public comment?
Happy New Year, everybody. Wayne Goddard, 128 North Bond Street, but I also own a house at 114 Linwood Avenue, which is directly adjacent to this property. And I'm here to express my full-hearted support for this. I'm also a member of the Bel Air United Methodist Church, and this is going to be an exciting opportunity for our church to raise some revenue, to also put a house that we could not financially maintain anymore, despite a lot of free services by a lot of church members, and to provide a community amenity for at least 4 more, or probably 4 more families. 'Cause I know a family's remodeling the old house, and then we look forward to having 3 new neighbors across the street. So I would strongly support this and ask that it be approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to make comments? Okay. Well, we have a motion.
I move that the Planning Commission acknowledge that the application is consistent with the comprehensive plan for the development as required by Town Code 165-19.
Second?
Keith? Pete?
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Subdivision.
Mhm.
And I'll move the subdivision plan be approved, conditioned on the following. One, prior to plat recordation, submission of a final subdivision plat for signature incorporating comments from the staff report and comments from the Bel Air Department of Public Works in a memorandum dated August 17, 2022. B, the Bel Air Department of Planning and Community Development in the attached exhibit. That's the subdivision. And the reason to address comments from reviewing agencies as required by Section 165-76A and 165-116A.
And second?
Keith? Keith? Pete?
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. And last but not least,
You know, I'll make a motion on the landscape plan, but Elizabeth, oh, where's Elizabeth?
where'd she go? Here she comes.
Well, before you do, is there any reason to hold off on the landscape plan until staff can confirm what the issue that Liz raised?
I don't believe so. All they need to do is show us, they need to show us the trees they're preserving so that it meets the required street tree.
Right, but if
A
for some
requirement.
reason the landscape plan that they've given us doesn't comport with what's on record, have we just given them the approval to modify?
No, what is on record is the forest conservation plan, the retention of the existing trees, whereas the landscape plan is addressing any requirements relative to landscape requirements in town, which for a subdivision plan is basically street trees. So it's very limited on on what it would be applied.
Elizabeth, I wanted to make a motion on the landscape plan, but as written there, is it good or do we have to revise it?
Sorry.
That's all right.
Get to that. Can I see what you're looking at? Sorry. I think it should say that also, to address comments from Bel Air Department of Planning and Community Development in the attached appendix, and notify the Planning Commission of any change to the previously approved forest conservation plan, which is where the trees show up, right?
Yeah.
Right, but the
Okay.
planning commission doesn't approve the forest conservation plan.
No, but
That's,
they would come back if, they would notify the Planning Commission if there was any changes to that plan, right?
they wouldn't necessarily have to, because they're not the approving authority. The town administrator, or the zoning administrator is.
Okay, what about if they have to come back, if they have to amend the declarations?
They would have to do that,
Okay,
yeah.
so revise the landscape plan to address comments from the Bel Air Department of Planning and Community Development in the attached appendix, and notify the Planning Commission of any required amendment to the declarations. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Try to make it
Very
easy.
good.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So
Took the words
I
right
was
out
just
of your
checking to
mouth.
make sure Elizabeth knew what she.
I'm still awake.
No, seriously, that's my motion.
Second,
Keith?
aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Phil?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, now we are going to review the current ordinances that have been submitted. And there will be public input on these. So Kevin, if you would please present.
I might suggest, if I may, that we approach these one at a time. There are 4, one at a time. Let the public participation be first. Let us hear that, digest that, make some comments of our own. And then my other suggestion would be to, before we would formalize any response to the Board of Commissioners, that we give Commissioner Coates, who had to be absent tonight, the benefit of some time and input, and prepare to have a final our response to the town board at our February 1st meeting.
Does that,
And
does that February 1st date fall within the 60-day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Agreed?
do we need a second, do we want to present that
No,
as
it's
a
just a
motion now?
procedure.
Okay.
Just
All right.
received the,
All right.
Okay, this is ordinance 818-23. It's a revision to the adequacy standards related to school capacity. Proposed ordinance amends the code to reduce the adequate public facilities threshold for deferral of development from 110% to 100% of school capacity and eliminates the consideration of capacities of abutting school attendance areas. As a context, Havre de Grace uses 110% and includes the ability to use the abutting area capacities. Aberdeen uses 115%, and Harford County uses 110%. The town has no control over the Board of Education and its timeline for redistricting, so any reduction of the capacity threshold will expand the number of schools which are considered overcapacity in the town of Bel Air. Under the current growth report numbers, applying 110% without considering abutting attendance, applying 110% without considering abutting attendance areas will cause development in Bel Air Elementary School and Homestead Wakefield Elementary School attendance areas to be placed in moratorium. This change would bring the town and county in alignment regarding APF. A reduction of the threshold to 100% will also add Hickory Elementary and Red Pump Elementary School attendance areas to also be in moratorium. Other counties and municipalities use varying thresholds for APF. The staff kind of looked around and tried to identify any jurisdictions which use 100%, which is what's being proposed. Anne Arundel County does, Mount Airy does, Queen Anne's County, and Laurel all use 100% of the school capacity. Most of these also provide the ability to mitigate their impact, and that may be through developer contributions for purchase of property, expansion of buildings, school buildings. Some jurisdictions also allow a phased approach to development or limit the period of a project that a project can remain in moratorium. I think, I want to say Laurel, but I may be wrong, limits it to 6 years. So, that's all I got.
Public comment?
Hello again. Wayne Goddard, 128 North Bond. I'm here to speak in opposition of this ordinance. And in the interest of full disclosure, I'm here to speak in opposition to every single ordinance. But the reason why this one is particularly inappropriate is because it does create a moratorium. What the planning commission is tasked with in order to recommend, should it be green? Yeah, it should be. Because what the planning commission is tasked with under the law of the land use article is determining whether this ordinance is consistent with the 2022 comprehensive zoning plan. That is where the point of inquiry begins here tonight, and where it should have began with the commissioners that introduced this. The comprehensive plan, which I have here today, provides for increased density in our town, and it also specifically finds that there are adequate public facilities to accommodate that contemplated growth. Many of the comments that you will likely hear tonight will be focused upon conditions that exist today. You will likely hear from people talking about their schools are crowded now, their children are being taught in closets, which I don't see how that's even conceivable. I think that's just a false narrative to generate emotion. But the ordinance or the moratorium that is sought by the commissioners, or certain of them to be enacted, is intended to do one thing. That is stop the development and the redevelopment of some property along Broadway where they live. But unfortunately, all of the other projects that are in the pipeline are the collateral damage to that selfish motive. So don't be fooled by the arguments which people come up and say, well, my child has art on a stage or choir in a closet. We're talking about projects that won't come online for at least another 2 to 3 years. Moreover, if the moratorium that is sought is passed, the Board of Education will get a pass. They won't have to redistrict because there will be absolutely no growth in our town. They can simply not redistrict. They can't rebalance the schools. They won't have to build any schools. Effectively, they won't have to deal with the problem that they're elected to deal with, they're appointed to deal with. Putting the moratorium in place is never going to solve boundary issues. The commissioners are under the mistaken belief that the only students that attend the schools that are located in the town of Bel Air are residents of the town of Bel Air. But that is simply not true. As many of us know, the vast majority of students that attend Homestead Wakefield are on Wheel Road, Cedar Day, neighborhoods like that. So again, the moratorium is simply doing one thing. It's punishing the residents of the town of Bel Air. It's stifling the growth of the town of Bel Air to achieve a motive that is not proper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New
I'm
Year.
not as tall as Wayne. I speak in opposition to ordinance number 81823, APF schools.
Name, address.
Joseph F. Snee Jr., 112 South Main Street, Bel Air, 21014. Sorry, Madam Chair.
No problem.
This 100% rule is patently unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has opined that a moratorium in excess of 1 year is constitutionally suspect. APF schools is an unconstitutional taking of property under the 5th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution, which last time I checked applies in the town of Bel Air. If a school is placed in a moratorium by this 100% rule, there is no remedy that can be provided by the town of Bel Air. It has to come from the Board of Education of Harford County in the form of building new schools or rebalancing enrollments or both. To put things in perspective, when I graduated from Bel Air High School in 1977, there were 34,000 students in the school system as a whole. Fast forward today, 47 years later, there's only 38,000 kids. 4,000 difference in that time. And in that time, Harford County Public Schools and the board have built or refurbished 21 schools. And if you look at the latest growth report, the elementary school population as a whole, across the board, is 93%. Middle schools as a whole are 81%. The combination of middle and high schools, 95%, and then high schools, 81%. We're not talking about adequacy. We're
1
talking
minute.
about underutilization. And the school board's reluctance to rebalance enrollments. And that's what has to be done. The taxpayer should not have to fund more schools because 93, 81, and 95 and 81%, that's your capacities. Thank you very much.
Question, if I may. If the 100%, in your view, would be unconstitutional, how is the 110 that we now have not unconstitutional? Or is it?
No, in my view, the 100% is unconstitutional, Commissioner Robb, because it places schools in moratoria and it cuts the ability of developers to build product.
But doesn't the
And
110 do that as well?
110%, well, you know, 25 years ago, we sued the Board of Education because they play voodoo economics on how they count class sizes. They really do. And we won, but 100%, in my view, is a taking. And 100%, 110% is a
Just curious
reasonable.
from a constitutional standpoint.
Yeah.
'cause you're-
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Catherine Brown, 800 Jackson Boulevard. I just want to offer a little bit different opinion. I'm not necessarily opposed or pro or against lowering it. But what I've heard is a lot of numbers being thrown out. And when you're talking about schools, you can't look at the numbers. I have 3 kids. Well, 2 in Homestead Wakefield and 1 in Bel Air Middle School. I'm in there every week volunteering. Regardless of the numbers, I see the crowdedness, and I see the lack of, not the lack, but the understaff. There's too many kids and not enough staff, and whether that is a problem to be addressed by Harford County or by you guys limiting the capacity, it's a gray line of who's in charge of it. It needs to be worked out together for the benefit of the residents. My family has lived in Harford County for over 100 years, and we've seen, it's gone from a little nothing of a county. Bel Air's gone from a little nothing of a town, and it's just exploded. At some point, you do need to slow down the explosion of growth and take care of your current residents. And that starts with taking care of your school children and your school teachers and their families, making sure that they're getting a good education to continue the growth of the town. If you are limiting their education, you are limiting the future of the town.
May I ask, how do you see or not see the construction of the new Homestead Wakefield Elementary School addressing the concerns you have?
What do you mean, how do I see it?
Well, you said that the schools are overcrowded, and now they're building a new larger
Yes.
one.
So-
Does that address the problem in your mind or not? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Oh, no, I think it does. It absolutely does.
Oh.
But the school then, the county, Harford County Public Schools had to come and fight you guys to get that school built.
No, they only had,
No.
the only issue there was about whether an emergency road was going to go through so you could get to the hospital without having to come into town or go down to Ring Factory.
Well,
It wasn't any fight about the school. It was about a road, an emergency road.
okay. I'm not going to take up time commenting on that because it's past issue.
No, you
but-
just did, so.
But no, but the school they're building is only building to the current capacity that they have now. It's not building to a future
They don't plan for the
capacity.
future?
Well, they don't have, I don't know all the details, but I know that it has been so overcrowded that this school, whatever the process they went through to, I don't know, the building plans, I don't know all those details. I just know that they said it's only building to their current capacity. So
Okay.
by continuing to have this, by continuing to allow development in the area, you're going to continue to have the same problem where the schools are going to get overcrowded. They're going to need to build new schools. My point is that I don't think there's a problem with slowing down development to take time to make sure your current residents are taken care of before adding more and more and more and not being able to take care of them.
1 minute.
That was all. That was my whole point.
Thank you. And-
Good evening, everyone. Torrey Pierce, 5 South Main Street, Bel Air. Just here to oppose ordinance 81823, and just want to offer a little bit of historical context. So 25 plus years ago, the APFO law came to fruition in Harford County, again, at people that didn't want any more development to happen adjacent to the neighborhoods where they moved into. And the law was initially passed at 120% school capacity. You would be considered overcrowded. And the purpose of that was state funding for school expansions or school growth would only happen if you were over 120%. So the law was passed at that limit, and unfortunately, not enough schools were in moratorium to satisfy folks that were against any more development happening. So the county came back in a couple of years later and proposed legislation to drop it to the 100%. Well, you know, I think they realized through that whole hearing process and the whole process of trying to do that was not the right thing to do, and settled in on the 110%. Part of what's going on too is we got we have school impact fees being paid by every new resident that moves into a house. Well, the purpose of that money is to go toward creation of school capacity. And so we have to be managing that properly in order to address the situation. Unfortunately, the town of Bel Air doesn't have the ability to manage school funds. Harford County does, and Harford County Public School does. And so that's why the town of Bel Air took it upon themselves a number of years ago, and I'm sure some of you participated in that process, to create a little more flexibility in the APFO and expand it to the adjoining school districts in terms of overcapacity. And that was because our hands are tied in the town with respect to, you know, whether or not an elementary school is at capacity. Obviously, Havre de Grace agrees with that, you know, situation, and Aberdeen also agrees by allowing their capacity to be at 115%. So
1 minute.
I just think it's a bad move to go in this direction. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, is that no other public comments? All right. Kevin, if you'd like to go on with
I
the...
would just like to insert maybe, and this would be a request for some staff follow-up by the next one. Thinking out loud, to me, there's no reason for us to be more restrictive than Harford County is. They are the funders of the schools. But there is some merit for our guidance on this to be consistent with theirs, which would be the 110%, but without the adjacent school that we now have. So that's something I would ask us to think about between now and the next meeting. But tied to that, and what I'd like to see some staff response, Mr. Goddard's suggestion, his point was that it's not appropriate to make any of these changes until you have a new comprehensive plan. And I would like to get some kind of feedback from staff about whether that is a matter of law or not.
So,
Now,
Mr. Goddard, if I remember correctly, Mr. Goddard's comment was key to whether or not the legislation proposed is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Is that your understanding too, Phil?
Well, what I think I heard, not being a lawyer or a developer, was that notwithstanding any consideration of ordinances that would change the development regs, that it's inappropriate time-wise to insert something when it's different than the comprehensive plan guidance. Is that
Okay.
fair? Not trying to put words. Why don't you put your own words in your mouth?
We can hit rewind on the video. That's the good thing about it. But if you want to chime in, Wayne.
Do you understand what I'm asking?
Again, Wayne Goddard, 128 North Bond. So, Commissioner Robb, I submitted a 10-page memorandum of law to each of you on December the 8th, which set forth the legal argument as to why the ordinances that were so hastily put forth will not withstand judicial scrutiny. So the Maryland land use, if you understand the way the process works, and I am a lawyer, but I'm also a business owner who's trying to relocate my business here to Harford County on 128 North Bond and do it in a mixed-use project. But I'm a lawyer first. I've been a real estate attorney for 25 years. I'm a practicing trial lawyer. I tried a case down in Charles County yesterday. So everything has to be viewed through the lens of the land use article. The reason why all of you are tasked every 10 years with doing a comprehensive plan is because the land use article requires a comprehensive plan to be prepared and submitted to the Maryland Department of Planning. The Maryland Department of Planning then reviews that comprehensive plan to determine whether or not certain ideals and statutory requirements for priority funding areas, which Bel Air is a priority funding area, has been met. Specifically, the Maryland Department of Planning is concerned that towns like Bel Air might attempt to close the door in a way that could be discriminatory in terms of fair housing. So they have enacted land use statutes that require these comprehensive plans that have housing components to them. All of these are targeted at trying to control new people moving into the town. They're all targeted at trying to keep people out that they perceive as being undesirable.
If I may, since I was the one who
Yeah.
dragged you back up here, let's just stick with the
So-
question at hand of
so-
where is the law stand on this matter of and it's
Mayor-
ultimately going to be a decision by the town board, and just a recommendation from us. In your view, is there a legal standing to have development regs imposed that that are not consistent with the current comprehensive
No.
plan? Okay, thank you.
And that's Maryland Code Annotated Land Use Article, Section 3-301.
Okay, so I have Mr. Goddard's memorandum, and I will review it. I gave it a glance over. He sent it in a couple weeks ago to I think to Kevin and I.
You understand my question?
I understand your question.
And it would matter, it matters because there's three things we could do here. We're only going to recommend, but either recommend don't do this or recommend that you go to what you're proposing, or recommend that you go to a 110 consistent with Harford County.
Mhm.
But if that's a legal problem, then we need to know that. The
Okay.
board would want to know that too.
I'm happy to provide you with advice in writing that would be covered by the attorney-client privilege.
Good, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Mr. Goddard.
Provided it to everybody, so you should have that in your package.
Yeah,
You say that was provided? That was provided?
it was
Yes.
provided.
Yes, we have read it.
One other thing, just to remind everyone, the way that the comprehensive plan works is that it's a 10-year plan. So the last one, obviously, just last year, was 2022, so it would go to 2032. The Planning Commission also, and the town board, has a option to review at the 5-year mid-mark to see whether or not there is a necessary update that needs to be made. And usually that includes any kind of studies that are performed between 2022 and 2027. So that would be including all of those supplementary studies.
And hasn't that been kind of routinely the case about every 5 years that's
It
done?
has, but there is an option. If the Planning Commission and the town board do not see a reason to update the plan, it stays the way it is and goes to 2032.
We have been doing it every 5.
You have been doing it every 6, I think, yeah. It's-
Okay.
Just to try to discuss Phil's point here, the comprehensive plan does not get into this level of detail about anything as far as I can remember. And it certainly doesn't address whether the adequate public facilities ordinance should be at 100 or 110. It's a matter of interpretation by anybody who's looking at what the goals and plans for, as articulated in the comprehensive plan are. Certainly when we, years ago, recommended that the percentage be dropped from 115 to 110 to coordinate with the county, it was never based upon the comprehensive plan. It was based upon a practical concern of the county having one standard and the town having a second. I can't believe that there is anything in the comprehensive plan that would prohibit us from dropping it to 100. I don't believe that that's a wise thing to do, but I can't believe that the comprehensive plan would prohibit us from doing that.
Right, so
Thank you.
the comp plan is basically a general set of guidelines
Right.
that
It's goals
is a
and
basis for
ambitions.
which the town controls development.
And obviously, the individuals like Mr. Goddard and Mr. Snee, who have been actively opposing the ordinances, their position has been quite vocally stated that dropping this to 100% based upon the numbers that are provided either by the 2022 growth report or the Board of Education, as we see it right now, will, in effect, shut down development in the entire geographical area of the town of Bel Air. I mean, I'm making a very broad summary of what their comments are, but that doesn't necessarily, you know, sort of as you pointed out, Keith, like, be said in the comprehensive plan. So the theory is that if you shut it down completely from one end to the other in the geographic boundaries, you are theoretically, quote unquote, and I'm not trying to put words in their mouth as I understand their position, you're ignoring the comprehensive plan. Why? Because there's different goals and objectives set forth in that plan on furthering fair and affordable housing and mixed-use projects. I mean, Kevin can kind of chime in. That's my recollection from reading it, even though it does kind of read like a microwave manual. But, you know, so that's
Thank
kind
you.
of the theory, is that it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan because it's shutting down any growth under those goals and objectives that are in that plan. So you're right to that point, but it's sort of like a theory, a legal theory, if you will.
In your professional view, if we went to state at 110, but in the same manner that the Harford County is, without the adjacent school that we have, then would that sustain muster?
I mean, I'd have to take a look at it and probably submit an actual formal opinion rather than say it, you know, publicly.
I'd be interested to know that just from our recommendation. And
Yeah, but
imagine-
as I understand the numbers, and Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, that would not shut everything down. There are still a couple schools that are below 110. Isn't that correct? So,
I mean, to me, there's lots to be said for us having a standard on this that is the same as Harford County.
And-
I don't know why we would want it to be more restrictive, but I can understand there'd be a point of view that, well, why would it be less restrictive? It could be the same, you know.
correct. And there's something to be said when you're kind of arguing one way or another, if there is opposition, to say, okay, well, I did it exactly like the county does it, right? Like, they've sustained it all these years at 110 with no abutting. That is their standard. So a lot of things municipalities adopt that their counties also do because they've passed muster, legal muster. No one's challenged it. So, you know, that's kind of sometimes a safe way to do it. It's just a thought. So.
Thank you.
I think we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, and the reason why Bel Air uses abutting districts rather
bring that forward so they can hear you?
rather than not using abutting districts is because, as one of the speakers pointed out, it's not as if the town of Bel Air has its own school district. It's split among three right now, and frankly could be split among more. So it almost by necessity is at the mercy of the Harford County Public Schools redistricting as to where its population will be attending elementary school, high school, et
Yes.
cetera.
Yeah.
Right, just for everyone's edification, the majority, like you said, are three districts: Bel Air Elementary, Homestead Wakefield Elementary, and Red Pump Elementary. There are two others that are kind of grab a little portion of Bel Air, not much of it. One is Hickory Elementary, which is really does not affect the town because it's the only thing that grabs is a shopping center, and the Prospect Mill, which basically includes the area where St. Matthew's is located and some of those townhouses that are there.
And of course, while Harford County is the funding arm for the public schools, they have an independence of their own. I guess they certainly have more leverage over that decision than we do, but they don't have total leverage either as the school board is an independent body.
The other thing I wanted to point out with lowering it to 100% is that, and Mr. Cini sort of alluded to this in his comments, is that reducing it down to 100%, you know, isn't exactly, you know, not possible, okay? But where you're shutting it down completely, You have no control to fix the problem. You have none. And the town doesn't have control over what the Board of Ed does, whether it's build schools, refurbish schools, or redistrict. Zero. Developers and individuals who want to develop the property have no way to mitigate what the problem is, right? So if it's open space, right now we have fee in lieu. You can't provide it for some impracticality reason. You can pay, but you can still move forward. This would be like 100%, sorry, shut it all down. You have no way to mitigate anything. So the examples that Kevin's department found was that every single jurisdiction that had 100% had some measure or some means to allow the developer to mitigate. It could have been such things as, one was like donating land to the Board of Ed, paying for parks, depositing more money, phasing in developments over a longer period of time. Now that's probably more of like your huge developments that you wouldn't necessarily see within the town limits. But, there's something to be said with saying, we have this problem, we want to legislate this problem. However, I'm going to take your bundle of property rights and run off with it. You have no further rights, you're just going to own it. Your value is going to drop, you have no rights. So that you could make that recommendation, or you could ask Kevin and I to do a little bit more research on it if you wanted us to. We're happy to always help you.
One thing to
That would
point
be
out,
great.
just again, more for edification, there was a reference to a fee that each developer pays when they produce or they propose dwelling units in the town. I think Mr. Pierce talked about it. The numbers I have is $6,000 for a single-family home per unit, $4,200 for townhomes, and $1,200 for apartments. And the reason those are graduated is that single-family homes and townhomes produce a lot more kids than apartments do.
Sure.
And that, so the fee that they're requiring is kind of commensurate with that.
Okay.
And that would be wonderful if you could provide additional information for us.
Certainly happy to do it.
Thanks. All right, second ordinance, please.
Ordinance 819-23 is the elimination of fee in lieu for open space provision. This proposed ordinance will prohibit the allowance of a payment in lieu of required provision of open space for residential proposals. Havre de Grace does not allow fee in lieu for open space, mostly because Havre de Grace doesn't require open space for most developments. Some of them they do, but most don't. Aberdeen does not allow open space fee in lieu. Harford County does allow fee in lieu for required open space based on a calculation of the cost of the property using 110% of the appraised value. So if you owe an acre, it's 110% of whatever an acre costs in that zone or on that property. County also allows open space amenity projects to be proffered based on an agreement with the developer. So that a developer could come in and say, look, I can't provide the open space, but I'm willing to go into your local park and build a playground, and it's going to cost this. And then in that sense, though, the developer has to enter into an agreement with the entity, in this case, the county. Some possible unintended consequences of eliminating flexibility for open space are the effect on dense urban areas such as downtown. There's no way to provide open space on the downtown parcels. So if somebody came in and wanted to do an apartment building off of Main Street, it'd be tough for them to provide the required open space on the property itself. Those lands are smaller and typically not available for that kind of thing. The current definition of open space is limited to exterior applications and does not specifically allow interior fitness rooms, community rooms, et cetera, things like that. That's an option that might be available. There are also size limitations applied to the current application of open space, which require a minimum of 500 square feet for an open space to be, for a piece of ground to be called open space, which was really designed to prevent somebody from coming in and counting all of their landscape islands and their parking lot as open space. We saw that as being somewhat, just doesn't really count as open space in our opinion. And you need a 10-foot width to qualify too, so you can't take a little 3-foot section of what's in front of a building and call that open space. So we were doing that. But if there's no fee in lieu, those parcels, there may be an opportunity to qualify those to allow a developer to count those since that they don't have the alternative anymore. Also, the ability to phase in provision of open space is not currently allowed in the town. So if you came in and wanted to do, and you had a larger development and you wanted to phase that development in, you could come in and propose, enter into agreement with the town to say, I'm going to provide this much open space now, this much open space in the future. That would all have to probably be bonded because there's no guarantee they don't walk. So that's, again, the kind of summary for what's being proposed.
Thank you. Citizens, anyone wish to speak to the fee in lieu?
Wayne Goddard, 128 North Bond Street. I'm opposed to the elimination of the fee in lieu. As I previously stated before the commissioners, I think most developers do attempt to create as much open space and amenities within their projects as possible, but there are some instances, as Mr. Small pointed out, where the land, because of its uniqueness in size or configuration, does not allow for that. The fee in lieu is something that is within the discretion of you, the members of the Planning Commission. It's not automatically granted, just like parking waivers are not automatically granted. It is a tool that is used by urban planners and planning commissions to facilitate projects that are consistent with the comprehensive plans for development within a community. In my opinion, as I've said, this legislation, this ordinance is a solution for a problem that does not exist. It's searching for a problem. It's not a problem. The Planning Commission has done an excellent job determining when open fees should be allocated and when projects should be redesigned to provide for open spaces. It simply is unnecessary, and I would request that the Planning Commission make a recommendation that the elimination of the fee in lieu is inconsistent with the goals and objectives of the 2022 comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. Peg Lucas, 516 Robinson Street in Bel Air.
Peg, pull that down just a little bit.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Better.
Basically, I'm speaking to all four of these, and rather than just this one, but I have the same thought for all four of these proposed legislations. Over many, many years, Bel Air has changed. During that time, great efforts have been made and continue to be made to anticipate the need for further regulatory changes in order to responsibly proceed. Research is done, rules are made in order to be better prepared. Specific to the matter at hand, the agenda items, old business, item 2, all four of the documents. I offer these documents. June 2023, the Economic Development Market Study. April 2023, Parking and Land Use Regulation Opportunities to Support Redevelopment, which serve to augment and support the need for mixed-use development. And of course, the 2022 Comprehensive Plan, which was developed with extensive participation by groups, including residents, business owners, state, county, and local representatives. This draft was analyzed by you, the Planning Commission, providing input based on additional technical data. Online portals solicited comments from the public. In addition to the 2 public meetings seeking comments to the draft, the town board and you, the Planning Commission, each held a separate public hearing to verify the draft prior to its adoption. These are resources that I consider more valuable than the recent concerns expressed by ill-advised protesters who fear the possibility of any change to their neighborhoods. This proposed legislation, all of these 4, will serve to negate these carefully researched plans for the future of the town of Bel Air. Going even farther, because things are built upon based on research and different studies. This 2022 updated to 2016. The town
1 minute.
approaches these tasks with great thought and fulfill the responsibility by coming forth with these documents. Please pay attention to them, honor them. People have spoken more eloquently than I about specific things, but that is the gist of what I would hope you would do. Thank you.
Thank you, Peg.
Joseph F. Sneed Jr., 112 South Main Street, Bel Air. I rise in opposition to ordinance number 81923. In 39 years of land development practice, I can attest to the fact that there are some sites that cannot meet open space requirements, and that's a fact. Between roads, natural resource districts, stormwater management, specimen trees, which measured from your breast is 30 inches in diameter or more, reforestation, hence the need for a fee in lieu. It just makes sense. And then you can concentrate that money in a worthy project that's off-site. I would advise you to watch the Supreme Court argument coming up in George Sheets versus the County of El Dorado, California. It's an illegal extraction case, and again, in violation of the 5th and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Everybody thinks the 5th Amendment only pertains to the right to remain silent, but it's more than that. Government can't take property without just compensation. This allows a developer the flexibility to do the development and pay into the town coffers what would be good for the town. The fee in lieu has contributed handsomely to the town open space recreation fund. It also works in Harford County, and it's a true tool for the development process that requires defeating 81923. Thank you.
Hey, Joe, before you go, what was the first name of the party for the Supreme Court case you cited?
Sheets.
Yes, it's George Sheets,
Sheets.
S-H-E-E-T-Z, Liz,
And
the
it-
County of El Dorado, California,
California.
and it's made its way to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
I think it's a fascinating case.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to respond? All right. If you would go to the next.
Next.
Mhm. Or, I'm sorry, did any?
Oh, yeah, you want to
commissioners
talk about this?
wish- Yeah.
We're not going to make any recommendations tonight, right?
Right.
I would say.
Just thinking out loud tonight. Yeah, and the only,
My thought is to wait until Don gets back, and then we can
Yep.
really cut loose.
just jumps out at me that, here again, Harford County maintains a fee in lieu of process, and I don't know why we would want to not have one at all. It might be circumstances where we do want to have it or don't want to have it, but to say to eliminate it, it just seems like we're going to be restricting ourselves relative to our borders.
Now, keep in mind what would probably happen, I think Kevin and I kind of chatted about this a little bit, but you have an impracticality requirement to be found under the statute. So if this is removed, I'm not advocating one way or another, it's going to increase the number of variances to the Board of Appeals. He's going to have a different standard at the Board of Appeals to prove a variance, because they're going to say, I can't meet the requirements of open space because of a hardship rather than an impracticality, right, on the property. So that's just something to think about, so.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything that you want staff or council to research?
I would certainly hope with all of these ordinances that if there's information that you can add to help us understand and make this final decision once Don is back and we have an opportunity, that would be greatly appreciated.
Certainly.
And maybe, would you want to, we know we have limited space in the town. And could we possibly know where some of those funds, what they have done to benefit our town?
Certainly, we can provide that. Are you looking at other options for flexibility? Is that what you're kind of
Yes.
thinking about?
Something in particular, and here again, I'm thinking out loud, would be, well, what if the big thing we want to try to accomplish going forward in today's world is mixed-use occupancies, and what if, is there wisdom or merit in fee in lieu of only applying to mixed-use occupancies?
Or active interior
You mean permitting active interior?
to be counted as?
Yeah, as part of the open space. Kind of like the idea that was floated around about Hartford Mall putting a pickleball court in the mall with the
Yeah.
closed shuttered spaces. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe what we'll do is, because everything so far, with the exception of the APF, has been limited to just Hartford County and the other jurisdictions within Hartford County. And I think what we can do is reach out to other municipalities that are similar in size and similar in makeup. So maybe we look at other county seats, we look at ones that are the same general population. We wouldn't want to get something that is like a resort community and whatnot, but so we can put together a list and research those.
Thank you so much.
Kevin, I would be curious to know if anyone on staff has any reason why giving the planning commission the flexibility to have fee in lieu creates a problem. I mean, as I see it, it's just an option that we have that we can choose to use if the circumstances require it, but it doesn't, we're not required to allow a developer to have fee in lieu. It's just something we can allow. Is there any downside to having that flexibility?
Right now, I don't have anybody on my staff that has expressed that, but I think you have, in a sense, the town has pretty stringent requirements for what can be counted towards open space. And then on the other hand, if the open space fee in lieu is removed, then that flexibility, that lack of flexibility needs to be examined. And that's what I'm kind of getting from you, is to look at that to see if the open space fee in lieu goes away, what takes its place in terms of still holding the developer's feet to the fire with regard to providing adequate amenities. One of the things I can tell you this, is that Hartford County is 110%, is likely going to be much more beneficial than our current requirement, which is $50,000 an acre. There are not too many properties in the town of Bel Air that cost $50,000 an acre. So that's something that would then be put onto the developers to go out and be a little bit more creative.
All right. The third ordinance, please.
Okay, this is ordinance 820-23, and this is a reduction of building height in the B2, B2A, B3, and B3A zones, and adjustment of setbacks in the B2 and B3A districts corresponding to building height. Proposed amendments associated with this ordinance require building height in all zoning districts to be reduced to a maximum of 40 feet. While most zones are currently below this building height limit, which are almost all the residential zones, all the residential zones, the B2, B2A, B3, and B3A districts allow for greater building heights. B2, which is the central business district, that is basically Main Street, is 55 feet. B2A is the central business gateway district, and that's positioned all around the downtown, but it's typically butting up against residential properties. That's 45 feet. B3 is the general business district. That's what we pleasantly call the Four Corners. Hartford Mall, Tollgate Plaza, Tollgate Marketplace, and Bel Air Town Center. And then there's others, but that's the main portion of them. That's 65 feet. B3A, general business gateway is 55 feet. That is in mostly the areas that are surrounding like things like industrial districts or the B3. But that also butts up against residential districts. The district that runs along Bond Street is mostly B3A. In addition, this building setbacks are adjusted according to building height in the B2 and B3A, with greater setbacks for higher buildings provided. These setbacks would be eliminated because the taller buildings would no longer be permitted. So the setback from residential in these two zones is proposed to increase from, and also the setback from residential is proposed to increase from 10 to 25 feet. The town has exceptions for heights of churches, hospitals, schools, libraries, and places of public assembly, where the height limit may be exceeded with the requirement that additional setback is provided based on one additional building height for 3 feet in setback. I'm sorry, wait a minute. For additional building height of 3 feet for 1 foot of setback. And that's only for the side and rear yards. Government structures are not required. Well, all structures are required, but if you're the county or the state, you can ignore them.
Or the town building the parking
Yeah.
garage, right? I mean,
That's just the way that the zoning is set up, where the state doesn't have to adhere to that. Havre de Grace limits conditional uses based on the development type. Residential and institutional 60 feet, multifamily and hotel is 80 feet. They kind of jump around. There's a lot of specific items in there. Aberdeen building heights range from 40 feet to 60 or 80 feet depending on the use. 60 feet is the limit for most uses in most business districts. Harford County limits building height based on the number of stories. So the other two are feet. Harford County sticks with stories. 3 stories are the limit throughout the county with the exception of the R3 and R4 districts. Most building height exceptions are, and one of the things, 3 stories is basically equal to 40 feet, which is what's being proposed. And something I'll mention here is that Town of Bel Air was 40 feet all across all zoning districts, and I want to say prior to 2006. I don't know what the exact date or year is, but it's about 20 years ago. Most building height exceptions are typical for all jurisdictions. These may include elevator, stair towers, parapet walls, HVAC units, and associated screenings. In other words, if you have something that's protruding above your roof, if it meets some of those exceptions, you can have that. Somebody has a tank that's going to hold fire extinguishing water, that's allowed to be higher than the height limit. Same with antennas, things like that. The reduction in permitted building height will likely create several non-conforming buildings in Bel Air. Some of these may include Brightview Assisted Living, Harford Mutual Insurance, English Country Manor, Overlook, and Legacy at Gateway. Now, these are assumptions based on just us driving around and just taking a look at the number of stories and just assuming what the heights are. No surveys have been done. Nothing has been calculated. We're just kind of estimating what those heights are to see whether or not there would be some non-conforming uses. Expansion of residential setback in the B2, B3A from 10 feet to 25 will likely create numerous non-conforming developments. That's all I got.
Public comments?
Wayne Goddard, 128 North Bond Street. Obviously, based upon my address, I own property in a B3A district. We have designed a 55-foot tall mixed-use project. It's going to have a restaurant and retail on one level, and then the second and third and fourth levels will have upscale apartments, and then the top level will be a penthouse office for my holding company, as well as a very prominent local law firm. Again, we believe that this ordinance is specifically tailored to do one thing, and that is to attempt to be a hedge in the event that Mr. Boat and his co-respondents lose their lawsuit, because it's clearly only focused on the properties on Broadway. No one was critical of the 55-foot height during the comprehensive zoning hearings. None of the commissioners spoke against that height. None of them proposed lowering that height. We relied upon the diagram that is set forth in Exhibit C to 165, which shows a 55-foot height building with 5 stories. We have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars designing our project to be in punctilious compliance with the aesthetic and the requirements. Again, this is a solution in search of a problem at best, and more likely than not, it is a private vendetta that is being sought to be enacted into an ordinance. There is simply no reason to enact this. You cannot construct the dwellings that are desired to be constructed in the B3A Gateway Mixed-Use District at 40 feet. This will completely forestall the possibility of doing that unless you go to get a variance from the Board of Appeals. So, you know, you enact an ordinance that you know is going to create non-conforming uses, so then when Hartford Mutual, God forbid, something happens to it, it burns down, or they move out, or they, you know, or they have to repurpose it for something, then they have to come back in and get a variance. The same thing with any of those condominiums. The practical and legal aspects of enacting this ordinance to create non-conforming uses will be that it will be very difficult to get financing on some of these buildings, because one of the questions that the underwriters always ask is it a non-conforming use? Because that's very expensive to insure, because then you have to comply with code requirements. Again, I believe, and Mr. Snee is the constitutional scholar here, but I believe that if you take 15 feet
1 minute.
of development height away from me, that's essentially a taking without compensation. Many people look at taking in terms of taking the horizontal plane of the property, like taking the front of the property for a turn lane, but I believe that an argument could be credibly made that taking 15 feet of my bundle of development rights is taking that away from me, and for which compensation should be paid. Again, there's simply no need to enact this statute. It was introduced solely for one purpose, and that was to aid in the litigation against the town to try to hedge their bet in the event that they lost, that the B3A zoning in that area will have no impact. Thank you.
Joseph F. Snee Jr., 112 South Main, Bel Air. Ordinance 820 is a thinly veiled attempt to stop economic development in the town of Bel Air. I did the last annexation probably in the history of Bel Air off Tollgate Road. We annexed the property in with the town's support. It'll be redeveloped from 5 homes that were raised in dilapidated condition, and it'll be something magnificent. But when you look around the town of Bel Air, it has no more annexation possibilities. It's landlocked, unlike the city of Aberdeen and the city of Havergrace. So there's only one way to go. You have to maximize your infill areas, and you have to go vertical because you can't go horizontal. You can't do it. And that ordinance that's proposed won't allow that to happen. I think it's a terribly conceived piece of legislation that wasn't thought through and has enormous economic devastation consequences for the town of Bel Air. And if passed, I think it would be a tragedy for the town. And speaking of non-conforming uses, which Mr. Small referred to, non-conforming uses are not favored in the law. They're discouraged. So let's assume Hartford Mutual is above that threshold. The law doesn't favor those non-conforming uses, and that's what you're going to relegate these to if the commissioners pass this terribly short-sighted ordinance. So I would recommend that you recommend against it. Thank you.
Commissioners? Bill, comment?
No, other than it would be troubling to me as, I always think in something of this in the context of real-life buildings that are here now, could they be developed going forward? And Mr. Sneed just referenced my longtime employer, if Hartford Mutual wasn't there yet, if they were in some other county or some other state and that lot was vacant and they wanted to come in and build the building they have there now, if we pass this ordinance, nope, can't do it. And that would be a real tragic loss in my mind for the town to not be able to accommodate a facility like that. It's been a good neighbor and provides lots of jobs and lots of people walking uptown to get lunch in our local restaurants. And likewise, the legacy at Gateway Condominiums, which we approved here not terribly long ago, and I believe, if I remember right, at the commissioner's public hearing, and some of the representative for those folks came in and testified in favor of the ordinance. Well, maybe they don't care, but you couldn't build those today if this ordinance was passed. And there again, how would the town be better for not having those over there as they are now? And the newest section, if you ever walk down the trail, those are garages underneath the new building there where people can have their car inside out of the weather, so they're not out there like me on Reed Street scraping ice this time of year. So I think of stuff this way, and that's why I just think it would be a mistake to pass this particular ordinance.
Well, in a similar vein, I'll just add, I think what I said at the last meeting, which was this was exhaustively looked at when we raised the height standards several years ago, and the point that Mr. Goddard made was reiterated by other people at that time, was that the types of mixed-use developments that the comprehensive plan was encouraging to be developed in downtown Bel Air simply were not financially feasible with heights that 40 feet or so. So that was why they were raised, and that was why they were raised to the levels that they are now. And as I say, it was exhaustively reviewed at that time.
Yep. That would have been probably in the 2016, I think, right? It
Around
wasn't
then.
this past time, it was the time before.
Yeah, that's what resonates with me, with those people who said, if you don't raise it, we just can't make it financially. We just can't do it. We can't develop these things. So, as I say, that's what hit me back in 2016.
All right, thank you. And now, the last ordinance, please.
Okay, this is ordinance 821 -23, reduce the number of units per floor and per building block. Proposed amendments will include a limit of 4 dwelling units per floor and no more than 3 stories for apartments, that which would total 12 dwelling units per building. There's an allowance to expand the number of dwelling units to 6 dwelling units per floor, with a total of 18 units per building, with the approval from the Planning Commission. There is no limit on the current in the current code for multifamily. Currently, the density limit is 20 dwelling units per acre. The Havre de Grace uses one definition for apartments and has no limit on stories or units. Aberdeen uses 3 definitions for apartments: garden, mid-rise, and high-rise. Garden is limited to 3 stories, 4 dwelling units minimum. Mid-rise is limited to 4 to 5 stories, 8 dwelling units minimum, and high-rise is limited to 6 or more stories with an 8 dwelling unit minimum. And just note that that's minimum, not max. Harford County uses basically the same definition. So Aberdeen and Harford County are much the same as far as that go. Now, the town is just one definition. Our definition is apartment, and that's it. There's no garden apartment, mid-rise, high-rise. None of the other jurisdictions noted to place a limit on the number of units per floor. Approximately half of the apartment developments in Bel Air have floor capacities which are greater than 4, and this legislation would render them non-conforming. And I go through and listed them. Most of those are the ones that I've listed before. Do note that half the other apartments do meet this minimum requirement. So if you have the 4 units per floor, a lot of those are, at least half of the units in the town do meet this requirement. Let's see, limits on the number of stories at 3 may create difficulty in the downtown district and the highway commercial uses where land values are higher and more units are desired. Other unit types may become harder to development. 55 and older units will typically demand elevators, which are expensive to include in smaller buildings with less units. So, I didn't do that, I don't think. So what you're looking at is when you provide an elevator, that's an expense that is significant. Mixed-use buildings with retail and service on the first floor may need higher ceilings, require additional floor area, and it'll place limitations on the number of floors which can be provided under the current proposal. One of the things to note here on the last ordinance and on this one is, right now we're counting building height as in feet. You know, the town can revert back to what the county does, which is, say, number of stories. So that would mean Hartford Mutual would meet the requirement now, not necessarily the some of the others. But the reason that was changed to feet was because somebody could come in and do a 1-story building, and it can be 20 feet for 1 story. So unless you limit what a story is defined as, that flexibility or lack of specifics may become a problem. A great example is, I always look at the Verizon building right off of Alisane. That's 1 story. Doesn't look like 1 story, but it is 1 story. And that's an unusual building. Obviously, they have all those mechanics in there. That's not something that probably is a good example, but that is one of the reasons why it was done to feet rather than stories. But there is certainly the ability for the town to look at that. It used to be floors, stories, and feet were included in the code. That's all I got.
Anyone wish to speak to that?
Wayne Goddard, 112 Bond Street.
Wayne Goddard, 128 North Bond Street. This will be the last time I speak tonight, then. Again, this ordinance was very hastily put together and is also the one that's the most dangerous because of the thoughtless manner that it was done. By way of example, let's assume that the floor plate of my building is 10,000 square feet. Does that mean each apartment has to be 2,500 square feet? Or let's assume it was 20,000 square feet. Does that mean each apartment has to be 5,000 square feet? I mean, there's one purpose behind making the apartments so incredibly large, and that's to make them economically unfeasible to build or to make them so expensive that nobody that's undesirable can live there. More importantly, and obviously this was not taken into consideration, but Maryland Code Annotated Land Use 3-114 D subsection 1 is the fair housing provisions of our land use article. And it provides the housing element of a comprehensive plan that is enacted or amended on or after January 1st, 2023 shall include an assessment of fair housing to ensure the local jurisdiction is affirmatively furthering their fair housing. So I am assuming that whoever introduced this did not have a fair housing study conducted to see what the impact of a requirement of a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot apartment would be on the ability to have affordable housing in the community. But I can tell you, it will kill it. It will kill it. So the moment that this ordinance is enacted, you have to notify the Department of Planning. They will immediately trigger a fair housing assessment because I'm sure one has not been done and one really credibly can't be done. So what's going to happen is when this is enacted, we're going to become subject to litigation, not by all of the developers, which will also file lawsuits, but also the Maryland Department of Planning and whatever other advocacy group would like to come into the Hartford County to enforce the fair housing laws for the state of Maryland. It is such an incredibly thoughtless piece of legislation, and just again, so selfishly done. It's just so selfish just to have a grotesque display of power, 8 minutes and 39 seconds after becoming a commissioner, to just come in and flex your muscles to show the community that there's a new sheriff in town, that it runs afoul of the laws of fair housing, and it's so discriminatory, and nobody even cares about that. I would ask that this commission not only move or vote to not recommend it, but also send back an admonition to not pursue this, because we are committed in Harford County to treating all the citizens fairly and to have fair housing and provide fair housing. And that's exactly what that comprehensive plan says. And the reason why the statute was changed is so that you can't enact a comprehensive plan that says one thing and then have a local town commissioner come in and do something else. Thank you.
Now we have Joseph Snee Jr.
Joseph F. Snee Jr., 112 South, Bel Air. My last time at the podium tonight, too. Ordinance 82123, as proposed, is nothing more than an anti-multifamily bill, better known as apartments. It is specifically targeted at the Klein family who wish to redevelop properties on Gordon Street and Broadway. I call it the anti-Klein family ordinance. That's the family that gives back to Harford County, along with the Drescher Foundation, more than anyone else. And I will tell you, I've worked on a lot of apartment projects. So I looked it up. The 2021 census states that the average mortgage in the United States of America is $1,499 per month. Of all the apartment projects I've worked on, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, they're all above $2,000. They could be approaching $3,000. There's nothing wrong with multifamily. Most of them I've done in Aberdeen and Habitat Race. But if you look around Bel Air, as Commissioner Rob just said, you know, you have the one apartment project down there, maybe it's condo. But if you look on Gordon Street, Mr. Zulus, who did a great job of rehabbing, you know, the former Board of Education, he couldn't do this project under that ordinance. And it's 100% occupied. What is wrong with multifamily? It's a rush to judgment, and it's, again, a bad piece of legislation. And, you know, I'm not threatening anybody up here, but the town of Bel Air has to realize that they are going to be in legal jeopardy if that passes, for the reasons Mr. Goddard enunciated a few minutes ago. And it won't be me.
1 minute.
It'll be the U.S. Justice Department, because that Fair Housing Act has very serious implications and consequences if it's not followed. So I would tell the town fathers to get your pocketbooks out, because you're going to have to pony up. Thank you.
Torrey Pierce, 5 South Main Street, Bel Air. Just want to offer comments related to the design perspective with Frederick Ward Associates. Been doing work in Bel Air for 40 years now. So it was back in, I guess, the mid-2000s when the town changed the regulations to increase the height. And it is sort of tied to Ordinance 821 also. It's both of these bills, 820 and 821, are like, let's go back 25 years. Let's take the town back 25 years and not move the town forward. And it's a statement that says, well, we prefer underutilized real estate as opposed to opportunities to improve and be better. And so restricting multifamily units to be just like Hickory Hills or Heritage Woods or Country Village I mean, that's kind of a ridiculous thing to be presenting, so, or proposing. Totally opposed to all of these, and I think all 4 of these ordinances are a huge step in the wrong direction. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi again, Catherine Brown, 800 Jackson Boulevard. Once again, I am not necessarily in opposition of this particular ordinance, but the 2 addresses of the men that just spoke are businesses. I live in the town. I have lived in the town since 2006. My kids go to school here. I am here 24/7, not 9 to 5. For them to give their opinions, they're absolutely entitled to give their opinions. They spend a lot of their time, their money here. But I don't want to see more apartments here. I think they're hideous. I love my neighborhood, Homestead Village. Been here since the 60s. It is wonderful. We have a lot of friends. We do a lot of things together. The apartments are hideous. The apartments do not bring in homeowners who are invested in the town. They bring in temporary people who are not invested in the town, and they're an eyesore. And I think my opinion as someone who lives in the town and not just works here should be equally as valid, if not more, than the business owners.
Peggy Lucas, 516 Robinson Street, Bel Air, Maryland. I lived in this town, or worked in this town, owned property in this town, one or the other, since 1944. So yes, I've seen Bel Air when Homestead Village, when Jackson Boulevard was part of the Homestead Farm, and my home was adjacent to it. Bel Air has grown. Bel Air has changed. We don't like every little bit of the change, but we have to be open to what will be best for the town. The town has had to deal with strip shopping centers initially when Main Street died. We adapted. We got more shopping centers. We got more restaurants. We got a lot of everything more. And the people who moved into town, into Homestead Village and Hickory Hills and everybody else, appreciated all of these amenities. I appreciated them too. And I realized there was going to be more traffic, more inconvenience in many ways, but the town is growing. It still, to me, has a small town charm. I can walk down Main Street and see people that I know. I'm greeted by the shop owners. It's a small town. Whether we have apartments, condominiums, new growth that is allowed for and is planned for, it's still going to have the small town amenity. Downtown Alliance makes sure that happens. They make things happen in town. It brings people in town. We enjoy that. We can't stagnate. Please pay attention to the research you've done, the studies you've had done, and accept that we must have change. We cannot totally negate the opportunity for progress. Thank you.
Turn off my phone 'cause I'm listening to the broadcast and I'm going to get myself confused. More confused than normal. Robert Cahill, 9 South Hickory Avenue, just down the street. So the process of changing the development regulations typically is done to address specific concerns, specific issues. Someone comes to the town, someone comes to Kevin Small and says, I've got an issue, I can't comply with conditional use requirements, or or my neighbor has a principal permitted use, maybe it's affecting me in some odd way. Maybe we need to tweak the code to address that specific issue. That's typically what this amendment process is about, to address specific problems, specific concerns, specific pieces of property. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It is not done typically to implement major policy changes to the environment, the planning and land use environment of Bel Air. And that's what you're looking at. This is a major, these ordinances together are an attempt to carry out the policy vision of a small group of short-sighted individuals who feel they know what's best for Bel Air. It's contrary to what town commissioners have been doing for 30 years. It's contrary to what the Planning Commission goal has been for 30 years. The Board of Appeals decisions have been all these years. It's contrary to the comprehensive plan. It is not in the best interest of the citizens of Bel Air, not in any way, shape, or form. And to address a more technical issue, the more properties you make non-conforming, the more issues you create, not only for the department, but for the property owners themselves. Typically, when a property is non-conforming, especially commercial property is non-conforming, and the owner wants to sell or finance that property, there's a process that has to be gone through in order to satisfy the lender that the use is appropriate. So contact has to be made with the planning department. The lender has to be convinced that the use, that the collateral is appropriate for the loan that's being made. That means the use is appropriate and legal, and it can be a problem, and you are affecting the values of properties which you are going to create as non-conforming. That is not typically a problem because there are not typically that many non-conforming uses created by implementation of changes to the development regulations. Very, very few times that ever happen. It would happen in this case, and it would be a major impact. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Nathan Booth, 135 Wallace Street. I think I'm one of the few actual homeowners in the town of Bel Air that supports a lot of these projects. A lot of my neighbors don't. A lot of people that come up and speak, they do not. For me, my point of view, this has already been discussed. This has already been planned. I'm not as educated or as eloquent as some of the other people that are speaking. This is above my pay grade, so I'm not going to speak to what was done to develop this plan. Why are we changing it? It effectively is going to choke Bel Air. I'm newly engaged. We plan on having children right down the street here, 2 blocks away. They're going to go to public schools here. I don't see any problem. You're effectively talking about the next generation, my children, hopefully, their ability to grow and develop a town that I love so that I invest much of my own money and time in. Some of these projects, they are not for everybody. Mr. Goddard's project is directly behind my personal property, and Mr. Small can tell you a couple of years ago I was here with the Board of Appeals asking for permission to build a Juliet balcony. It's got great views of downtown Bel Air, and now I'm going to get to look at Mr. Goddard's project. I still support it. This is not a case of not in my backyard. It's literally my backyard. I don't see the issue. If we are not growing, we are dying, and I don't want that for my children. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, well, this ends the input from the, I'm sorry, are the commissioners having some comments to add to what has been said? Very well said. Thank you very much for participating. We are going to table this and look forward to the additional information that you and
If you can
Liz.
take a vote on that, that would be good.
Okay.
Move that we table.
Second.
Okay. Keith?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you.
Madam Chair, before we adjourn, just one procedural matter. For the Hartford Mall project, the applicant's rep is here. We were kind of hoping to keep the decision written and verbal motions the same date. So can Kevin has the original. Can we get your signature before we wrap up so I can give that to Mr. Minor?
Certainly can.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
And I don't have the report for the the projects that are under construction right now, only because when I prepared this to go out the door, my whole staff was sick. So I just was not able to produce that for you.
So does that mean you want me to wait until tomorrow morning to sign, or is this connected with it? Oh, okay.
don't have the, permitted projects already done.
The last, the update we get at the end of every meeting.
Okay.
We don't have that.
Oh, okay.
Not that you wanted to hear that anyway.
All right, well then, do we have a motion for
Move for adjournment.
adjournment?
Second.
Okay, all those